What's up, guys? Paulie Malignaggi here. This episode of Paulie TV is brought to you by the Boxing Showtimes app. You'll never miss another fight. You'll never not know what time it's on. You'll never not know what network it's on. And you'll never not know what bar is showing it in your area. I know a lot of us want to watch the fights at the bars or among people, among fans. Well, this app gives you the whole schedule, the network, and also gives you a list of bars and businesses that are showing the fight that you might be looking for. So you can go to this establishment and watch it among fight fans if you'd like. Paulie Malignaggi here for Paulie TV. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on everything we talk here on these channels in boxing. Wise opinions, facts, discussable situations. Listen, today's discussion is going to be about different styles in boxing. You got your punchers, you got your boxers, you got boxer punchers, you got runners, you got whatever, all kinds of styles. We're going to go into why, most fans like certain styles over others, and why certain fighters fight a certain style over others. Probably going to start with me. I was a guy who boxed mainly, from the outside. I like to be an outside boxer. I tried not to be on the inside too much. Although even an outside boxer has to have his moments that he chooses wisely in order to get inside to where he gets a little bit of respect. Otherwise, he's just going to be on his bike, and it can make the fight a little bit too difficult if you got to be on your bike all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. An outside boxer is not necessarily running. To the layman, because he's not going toe-to-toe, it may look like he's running. To the educated boxing fan, and you don't have to necessarily have boxing in your life to be an educated boxing fan, you can watch a lot of fights, but the educated boxing fan, while they don't always have the preference of watching this kind of boxer, the educated boxing fan also knows what is a boxer and what is just a boxer runner, I don't think just being a runner will have you have success at the highest level, but if you box on the outside and you know how to pick your paces, pick your steps, know how to just really toe the line to really be on the outside to the inside while you're hedging your bets more towards the outside, you know how to have the maximum success. If you start running, ultimately it's going to tire you out. The other guy's going to be chasing you and eventually going to tire you out. But if you're here's in my opinion what separates an outside boxer from an outright runner. An outside boxer, when he's making his defensive moves, always can remain in a position where he's threatening. So he may be stepping away from the danger. A punch may come his way. He may slip, slide, dip, whatever, step on the outside. But he remains dangerous by keeping his balance. We called it in the gym positioning. He kept his positioning while also making a guy miss. So it basically made him dangerous, and it puts him in a position where he has the option to counterpunch and not counterpunch. Now, you say, well, if he has the option to counterpunch, why doesn't he just counterpunch every time? Well, here's the reason. Because if you counterpunch every time and make a guy miss, then the other guy, a good fighter, will catch on to it, and he'll say, okay, well, he's going to be counterpunching everything I throw. So I'm going to set a trap to where he's going to counter, and then I'm going to counter his counter. So you want to remain dangerous when you're defensively slipping and sliding as an outside boxer, but not run, because when you're running, my opinion of what a runner is a guy who knows how to slip and slide, but he doesn't remain dangerous. He puts himself out of position defensively, and he's not able to give himself the option to be dangerous. And if a fighter sees this, I even remember seeing this sometimes with some opponents or some guys I sparred with, where if a guy has me missing a lot, but he's not remaining dangerous where he's keeping his body in a position where he can counterpunch, well, then I have nothing to lose. The worst that's going to happen is I'm going to miss, but I'm not going to pay. Once a fighter is in a defensively responsible position every time he's making you miss, where he has the option to make you pay, now you start to become respectful of him, because now you're not just going to throw anything, because he has the option to make you pay for it, and he may or may not. So all of a sudden you come a little bit more respectful, and suddenly your pressure sort of starts to diminish, because you got to think about the way you want to enter the punch zone. And a lot of people don't understand that this is how Floyd Mayweather fought his best boxing, from the outside. He was a pretty decent inside fighter himself, but from the outside, people are like, oh, well, why? He's a runner, why don't guys just go to him? Well, this is exactly why guys didn't just go to him. This is why Mayweather was not a runner. He was a boxer, because in reality, he was always dangerous in his defensive positioning. So if a guy just got reckless attacking, well, he'd pay. because Mayweather would make you miss in a fashion where his positioning was always excellent, and so he'd have the option to make you pay in any defensive manner, from any defensive position that he got himself into, making you miss those punches, especially at its best. And Floyd at its best was excellent at transitioning that offense to defense, defense to offense, sort of like in that, like water, the Bruce Lee saying, be like water, right? I mean, an excellent boxer can be like water. We can transition defense to offense really perfectly. And what that does is it forces the opponent to be respectful, and suddenly a guy who would usually pressure you suddenly all of a sudden has to wonder, oh my goodness, I can't just attack this guy. I have to, be a little bit more deceptive, because he doesn't just make me miss, but he's gonna make me pay if I come too reckless, So that to me is the quintessential boxer. Although Mayweather will call himself a boxer puncher, I consider him more of a boxer first guy, He'll punch if he needs to, if he's got you in a situation where he's weakened you and he breaks you down. But to me, that's just a boxer who just knows how to go for the kill at a certain point. You're a boxer overall, in my opinion. The other style, the opposite style of that would be the banger swarmer type, right? Like the Marcos Maidana, the things like Jack Dempsey back in the day, where there's not a lot of technique. Obviously, there's a method to their madness, don't get me wrong, because they wouldn't be that high of a level fighter if there wasn't a method to their madness. But basically, their whole point of being the fighter they are is to disassemble, discombobulate your style, especially if you're a boxer who's effective, your pretty style, like Maidana wanted to do to Mayweather, where he likes his time, he likes to make you respect his distance and make you double second guess yourself in attacking, because he can make you pay, and then suddenly you slow down. Well, these guys, when they're excellent at what they do, at their swarming, nothing will get their respect. They're willing to take the shots. They don't mind, and eventually they want to get inside and break you down no matter what. And if they can make you uncomfortable as possible, typically what ends up happening is they force more mistakes, because the boxer who's usually not getting touched, a typical good boxer, I remember I was like this too. I didn't like being touched, like I didn't like anybody being all over me, even if they weren't landing something effective. I just didn't like the fact that things were touching me, like I wanted to be on the outside, just feel comfortable, pick you off and all that stuff. But once a swarmer is consistently touching you, if he's able to be effective in that manner, because sometimes they're not. I think Maidana versus Devin Alexander, who Alexander boxed in a very good fashion in that fight, and then the swarming style of Maidana was nullified. So typically, that's your essential opposite clashes there. When the swarmer is being effective, it's not just about the landed punches or effective punches he's landing. It's also about the fact that he's making the boxer so uncomfortable that the boxer starts to make mistakes on his own out of frustration. Now, when you have a high-level fight like Maidana Mayweather with two high-level, where you have a high-level swarmer against a high-level boxer, there's not a lot of mistakes made there. So they're sort of creating the openings for themselves, But when a Maidana is fighting a lesser-level boxer, he'll be on top of him, he'll force more mistakes. Think of like an excellent boxer, but lesser level than Mayweather, like Amir Khan. Amir Khan was sort of dragged into a mud fight with Maidana, and it was a really close fight. It actually won Fighter of the Year in 2010, but the swarming style of Maidana against the boxing style of Khan was a great clash of styles, and it made for a really, really tremendous fight, where at times Khan's boxing was able to dictate, and at times Maidana's swarming was able to dictate in an excellent fight. If you remember correctly, Khan had the early knockdown to the body, which with a body shot that would have ended most fights, and Maidana got up in Heart of a Warrior, and by the end of that fight, he had Khan reeling. So an excellent fight, and typically this is where you have the saying, styles make fights. You have your swarmer banger against your boxer, sometimes puncher, right? But again, I don't really consider the boxer puncher style to be a real style. I consider it more of a boxer, and they become a puncher if they're heavy-handed. They become a puncher when they need to, when they see they have to go for the kill. Otherwise, their mentality is box you first. And I believe, honestly, guys like Mayweather, guys like Ray Leonard were like this. Even guys like Muhammad Ali were like this. You could consider themselves, they'd probably tell you they were boxer punchers, but that they go into the ring looking for the knockout right away? No. They'd go into the ring looking to fight you smart, and then when the knockout presented itself, they'd take you out, So they were a boxer puncher, but boxer first, right? Somebody like me, I was mainly a boxer, right? There wasn't a lot of knockouts. But I also had the same mentality. I just didn't have as heavy of hands as those guys, but it was the same thing. I wasn't going to take the risk of going for the knockout unless the opportunity truly presented itself, you know? So that's why I think the saying, the boxer-puncher style, they put the word boxer first, because those kind of guys are typically looking to box you first, while the other guys, the swarmers, looking to get in your face right away. They want to break your will to fight. They don't just want to hit you, but they want to beat you mentally as well. They want to, I think, don't get me wrong, everybody wants to beat you mentally, but they want to really break your will to be in the ring. They want to make it really uncomfortable for you to get in there. I think of guys like Chavez or a Miguel Cotto, Chavez Sr., mind you, or a Miguel Cotto, where they're technical, but they're still looking to be violent first. You know, their mentality is, I'm going to take you out. If you look at Chavez's style, it was pressuring guy. He wasn't a swarmer, though, because there's more technique to guys like Cotto and Chavez than there were to guys like Maidana and Jack Dempsey. So it's a hybrid version of the pressure style, but it's more technical. These guys are more gifted than the swarmers. I believe the swarmers are less gifted, but they have a method to their madness, and they're still effective. And the ones at a world-class level, because some do reach world-class level, some don't, but some do, they are very effective at what they do. And they're, like I said, there's a method to their madness. They know exactly how they want to approach the fight. I believe the banger type punchers like Chavez and Cotto are more technically sound. A lot of Mexican fighters in general are like that. Even a lot of Puerto Rican fighters in general, really, too. You know, you think like Wilfredo Gomez back in the day was also an excellent boxer, an excellent pressure boxer, you know, where he could box you very technically, but he could take you out, you know. I think guys like that were looking for knockouts, looking to take you out. They weren't looking to go to the cards, although obviously sometimes they went to the cards. But I think guys like that were technical. Even Felix Trinidad, you know. Again, you can name me most fighters from Puerto Rico or Mexico, and they were typically, they had this mentality, you know, they were looking to take you out first. Oscar De La Hoya was very, very heavy-handed, but I think he was looking to box you first. I don't think he would go in there looking to get the knockout, but I think he would eventually look for the knockout because he did have the power to do that. But so that, again, I put him more as a boxer / puncher, maybe in a little bit more aggressive fashion than a Mayweather, but nonetheless still look to box you first, you know. So that's my breakdown of the fights. You know, I think people love the swarmers. They love the guys who get the big knockouts. Obviously, the knockout in boxing is basically essentially the same, the pinnacle of the sport, right? It's you watch a soccer / football match, you look for the goal. The goal is the pinnacle. The goal is the moment you're looking for. You watch American football, the touchdown is the moment you're looking for. You watch basketball, the slam dunk or the three-pointer is the moment you're looking for to get out of your seat, right? In boxing, it's the big punch. It's the knockout. That's the moment you're always looking for in a fight. That's why you watch a fight, because the possibility of that happening is always there when two guys are fighting each other. So I think people gravitate more towards the pressure, the pressure fighters, the punchers. And I think sometimes while boxers can be punchers, like a Trinidad or even a Cotto, where they're looking for the knockout, but they're doing it in a technical fashion. I think probably people are more fanatical about, you know, guys with the Maidana style. You know, Maidana was rarely in a bad fight, although you can say that about Miguel Cotto too, if you really think about it. Basically, what I'm saying is people always gravitate more towards the knockout fighters, and they have less of an understanding of the boxers. You know, if I had $1 for every time I've heard people call Mayweather a runner, I might be rich just off that, regardless of my boxing career. But I think that it's a misconception. People misconstrue that, because I don't think if you're a pure runner, you're going to be able to be effective, because you've got to have an ability to make a guy pay off of your boxing moves, and even off of your defensive moves especially. That's how you gain a guy's respect, and you control him in there. You basically domesticate him, because he's coming aggressive, right? You fight a boxer, in my career, and I'm sure in most other boxers' career, when you fight a boxer, you're looking to take him out of his game plan. You know, you want to frustrate him by being in his face and make the fight as not technical as possible. Because when you're fighting a boxer, he's typically the more gifted guy technically. So you're looking to basically frustrate him mentally to where he starts making technical mistakes, and you can take advantage of those. While if he's able to keep the fight technical, it makes it a tougher fight for you. So when they say styles make fights, you know, typically guys that got in the ring with me were always looking to rough me up, trying to take me out of my mentality, my boxing mentality, hoping to create mistakes. And those that were successful typically were able to do that, right? But when a boxer is able to, you know, stay disciplined and keep his mentality of boxing from the smart positions all the time, not being a runner. Because again, a runner for me, a runner is a guy who doesn't hold his positioning defensively. And eventually those kind of guys, they meet their end. And I don't think just a pure runner will be able to be a world champion. You have to be able to be a boxer that understands positioning from a defensive standpoint, so that you are always dangerous, whether you're making a guy miss or whether you're attacking. And that will domesticate a fighter. That will calm down the aggression, even of aggressive fighters. And once you calm them down, they're at your mercy, because then their pressure sort of slows down, and you're able to beat them off the jab. You're able to take your time picking them off and frustrate them even more. The frustration can multiply in that regard, you know?
If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Enjoy watching fights in a bar, sipping a cold one? We got you. An interactive map with your local boxing bars is available to you at any time. And that's not everything. Set reminders, buy tickets, watch official highlights, get boxing news, and so much more. Download now. Thank us later.
So, you know, it's typical of that. I actually think of my fights with Juan Diaz. Juan Diaz was a pressure swarmer. He was good technically, though. Listen, he was pretty good technically, but he was a swarmer. He wanted to get in your face and wanted to throw a bunch of punches and break you down, you know? And I would not have been able to beat Juan Diaz if I didn't have defensively responsible. My defensive position wasn't responsible, because if I would have just been running, he would have worn me out. That pressure style, that swarming style would have worn me out. But because I was able to, you know, keep a good defensive position, he had to eventually respect that. You know, you got to be able to make a guy pay enough times to where you have to force him to respect it. And still, some guys are stubborn. At a high level like Diaz, you know, the fights were there. That's why we were main events on HBO at the time, right? Because you had a high-level boxer against a high-level swarmer guy. And, you know, I think we gave the fans 2 entertaining fights. But that's my breakdown, basically, you know? And like I said, I'll always understand why people gravitate more towards the swarmers, the punchers. It's sort of easier to understand. Everybody understands the home run. Everybody understands the goal in soccer or football. Everybody understands the touchdown, right? So everybody can understand the fighting. Hey, what do you mean? Fighting is always guys going at it. You know, people relate to fighting like getting into a street fight. Most people in their life are not going to fight in an organized fight. So they relate to that as aggressiveness, going for the kill, going for the KO, right? So it's more understandable, it's more relatable to kind of see the pressure guy, the puncher, the aggressive guy, than it is to understand how the guy is, how the opposite is effective, how the boxer is effective, how the guy who makes you miss and makes you pay is effective. It's less sexy to people at times in that regard, but it's also less fun in people in that regard. But I think it's also less fun because there's less understanding of that style, that ability, that talent. You know, they typically just call it, you know, to the naked eye, oh, he's running, you know, but just because he's not engaging all the time, you know. So there's a difference between a runner and a boxer, and that's sort of the differences. And that's it. That's my breakdown of the different boxing styles. You know, let me know what you guys think. And I'm sure there's a lot of opinions out there when it comes to the different styles in boxing and the preferences and whatnot. But I don't think you can be just purely one thing. Even if you're a swarmer, you've got to have some ability. There's got to be a method to your madness. Even if you're a defensive boxer, you can't be a runner. You've got to have an ability to stay in position. So even the two opposite ends, I don't think you can have a successful fighting career unless you know how to have a proper balance in those talents, in those abilities. I mean, typically the worst stylistic matchups you're going to have is pure counterpuncher against a pure counterpuncher. I mean, I remember doing a Showtime main event. I believe it was Argenis Mendez against Barthélemy, Rances Barthélemy, or maybe it wasn't a fight I was working, it was a fight I was at, I don't remember, but man, they were just watching each other, they were just looking at each other, and it was one of the worst fights I've ever seen in my life. Because I believe even if you're a guy who boxes first, you gotta also understand how to set the traps, right? You gotta know how to lead, and you also have to know how to sometimes use throwaway punches in order to create the counterpunching opportunities by forcing a guy to throw his shot so you can counter over the top of them. And you've got to always be feinting, but you got to have an effective jab. Listen, a jab is essential for anybody, but especially for a counterpuncher, because as a counterpuncher, especially one like myself, I was a good counterpuncher, having a good jab allows you to dictate without having to lead. I mean, if you lead just with the jab, you're going to open up frustrating moments for your opponent, and he's going to give you opportunities to counterpunch him, because he's going to be getting clipped with the jab so often if you got a good jab that eventually he's going to realize, if I don't start throwing punches, I'm gonna lose these rounds. So you force him to throw those shots because your jab is so good that it's landing. So and once you force him to throw those shots, mix with your feints, mix with your traps, of course, you create your counter-punching opportunities. So even against other boxers, you've got to have a good jab. I mean, when you start seeing guys who are just looking at each other, two counter-punchers, I don't believe two counter-punchers is necessarily always a bad fight. But if you got two counter-punchers who have no jab, then you got a problem. And that's probably the worst stylistic matchup to watch that probably nobody wants to see. Hardest style for me to go against, honestly, I can't really pick one. The best fighter I fought was Cotto. He had a good balance of boxing ability. He'd been in the Olympics. He was a terrific amateur, as well as terrific punching ability. So he had a mixture of both. He knew how to cut off the ring. But my most difficult style to go against was a fellow boxer. It was Amir Khan. You know, he had more physical gifts. He was younger. He was faster. The only faster guy I ever fought in my career. But he was. I looked to fight at range. I looked to set traps. Amir does the same thing in his own fashion. We didn't have exactly similar style, but we both had the same mentality of style, which was box first. And Amir just had that lanky frame with that speed, and he knew how to fight at distance better than I could. And I'm setting all my traps, and a lot of times Amir was falling for the traps, and he was still hitting me. You know, that's how fast he was, and that's how tall he was. So it was probably the most the biggest stylistic nightmare I fought in my career. And again, like, comment, subscribe. You know, let me know what you think. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opinions of these styles and the breakdowns of them. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the, you know, your favorite styles. I anticipate that, you know, your favorite styles are typically going to be the aggressive styles because, like I said, boxing fans can break it down, but the layman, the casual, will typically just gravitate towards the aggressive guy. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Those guys are fun to watch. I mean, I personally like to watch them too, but I also have an understanding and appreciation for the guys that fought like me. I personally also think that many times, if guys could fight like me, if guys could fight like even a high-level boxer like Mayweather, they would, because it's less damaging to you, and it's also, you know, more preserving of yourself. I think guys that take more damage typically take more damage in their careers because they don't have that talent to make you miss all the time as much. Although, don't get me wrong, I think if you're from a place like Mexico or Puerto Rico where the fans demand KOs and demand that aggressive style, maybe there's a little bit of peer pressure as well in terms of going that route and choosing to fight that style. But again, let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, and give me all your opinions. I'm Paulie Malignaggi, and this is Paulie TV.
If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Download now.